The Perseverance docked with a heavy clang. The sound reverberated through the hull plates. Thalia Dorn stood at the airlock with one hand pressed flat against the cold metal frame. She felt the vibration travel up her arm like the distant echo of a bell. The seal engaged with a hiss. Green lights flickered along the access panel. She stepped onto the ramp first. The air hit her face, humid and cool. It carried a faint scent of ozone and pressed moss, exactly as the briefing files described. The air was thicker than she expected, almost syrupy. She breathed it in deliberately, matching her lungs to the weight of it. Behind her, the Perseverance looked every bit a survivor. Mismatched hull plates showed scorch marks not sanded down or painted over. The silver skin of the nanoswarm crawled across the upper hull. It never stopped moving. She watched it for a moment, then turned her attention forward. The docking bay opened before her, a cavern of soft blue light. Bioluminescence pulsed from the walls in a slow rhythm. It was not quite a heartbeat and not quite a breath, something between the two. A tempo did not match her own pulse. The light rose and fell. She found herself counting the intervals. They were irregular, deliberately so. An Endari steward approached, tall and slender with translucent skin glowing faintly from within. The steward moved with a measured grace. Human walking looked clumsy by comparison. The steward inclined her head and spoke. "Welcome to the Endari Temple of Accord. May your presence bring balance to these halls." The voice was low and musical. The translation module at Thalia's collar rendered it in flat standard seconds later. She had practiced for this moment for months. There were drills, holosimulations, and a language tutor. The tutor sighed through every botched vowel. She bowed, not too deep. Too deep would signal submission, not too shallow. Too shallow would signal disrespect. The steward's eyes tracked the angle of her spine and seemed to approve. Thalia straightened and turned back to the ramp. Jasper Vane stood at the top. His gaze never stopped scanning since the moment the locks engaged. His mechanical arm whirred softly as he gestured toward the cargo hold. "I will supervise the offload," he said. "You go make friends." She caught his tone, flat and deliberately casual, the way he spoke when he wanted her to move on without worry. "The fruit needs climate conditioning within the hour." "I know what it needs." He bit down on his root and gave her a look. "Stop mothering me." A single gesture, she almost smiled, almost. She turned and followed the steward. The corridor beyond the bay was lined with translucent panels. Behind them, shapes moved in blurred silhouette. She spotted the flowing robes of a pair of Orvani, their long frames bent in quiet conversation. A containment field drifted past next. It carried a Photaurus, a being of living light. The creature was suspended in a magnetic stabilization halo, a shimmering cage of energy that kept it from dissipating. The Photaurus did not look at her. They never did. Loreth met her at the junction. He was younger than the steward, his movements quicker. He traced invisible patterns in the air with his fingers as he spoke. "Ambassador Dorn, I am Loreth. I will serve as your guide until Consul Mareth is ready to receive you." His standard was cleaner than the steward's. His eyes were bright with the kind of curiosity asking too many questions too openly. "You are the first human to set foot on this station," he said. "I have read the records from the war and the recovery period. 50 years is short, is it not, for a species to rebuild from collapse?" She kept her smile steady. "We work fast." "Yes, your endurance reports are very detailed." He tilted his head. "Is it true your species can continue functioning with bone fractures in 3 or more locations?" "It depends on the bones. I would like to see the medical data. I will put in a request." He did not catch her deflection, or he chose not to. Either way, he kept talking as he led her through the corridor, gesturing at the translucent walls, the station's facilities, the history of the temple. She let his voice wash over her and kept her eyes moving. The wall panels pulsed. The rhythm was still wrong. She could not stop noticing it. A tremor moved through the station, distant. A vibration rose through the deck plates and faded before she could locate its source. She stopped walking. Loreth stopped too. "What was that?" "A shuttle docking," he said. "Nothing more." His face told a different story. The bioluminescence in his skin flickered, a brief loss of rhythm. His eyes shifted to the side before coming back to hers. She did not believe him. "We have several shuttles arriving today," he added. "The Orvani delegation came in shifts. Their docking patterns sometimes cause harmonics." She held his gaze a moment longer than polite. Then she nodded and resumed walking. The tremor came again, stronger. The deck plates shuddered under her feet. She heard something in the distance, a sound, not vibration and not impact. A tone, low and resonant, it built and then stopped abruptly. Lorith's translator crackled. A voice spoke through it in clipped Endari syllables. The device rendered it into standard before he could silence it. Riven raiders have breached the outer marker. He stopped walking. His fingers froze mid-trace, hovering in the air. The bioluminescence in his skin dimmed. He turned to face her with an expression she had not seen on an Endari before. It was fear. He composed himself in a single breath. I will escort you to the secure chambers. The consul will meet you there. What about my crew? They will be guided by the dock stewards. My ship will be protected. She watched his eyes. He was lying again. He knew she knew. The trust between them was so thin she could see straight through it to the shape of the disaster forming behind his words. The station shook a third time. The lights in the corridor flickered, brown instead of blue. The pulsing rhythm of the walls went sharp and ragged. Lorith's hand moved toward a wall panel. He pressed his palm against it. The surface accepted him with a soft pulse of warmth. He spoke in his own language, too fast for the translator to catch. He listened to the response coming through the bioluminescence itself. He turned back to her. They are inside the outer ring. The wall panel pulsed once behind him. The low, resonant note sounded again. This time it did not stop. The crystal floor hummed beneath Marith's feet. A frequency vibrated through her bones and settled in her throat. She pressed her palm flat against Lorith's forehead, reading the echo of his recent encounter. The human woman's scent was still fresh in his memory, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, the absence of fear. Marith withdrew her hand. Lorith stepped back, his fingers tracing a nervous spiral in the air. She turned to face the council chamber. 3 Endari counselors sat in their alcoves. Translucent skin pulsed with slow, deliberate light. The Orvani ambassador stood apart, her scaled arms folded. A single claw tapped against the crystal floor with mechanical impatience. The Orvani spoke first. The Riven are testing your perimeter again, 2 skirmish ships at the edge of the system. You will respond this time. Marith kept her voice level. The Endari do not fight, we mediate. Mediation is what cowards call inaction. The ambassador's claw tapped harder. 3 sharp clicks echoed through the chamber. Neutrality has a body count, Consul. You have watched 3 border systems fall to the Riven because you refused to commit. The counselors said nothing. They never did. They observed, they weighed, they pulsed their light in patterns only Marith could read. Right now they pulsed a slow amber. Wait, watch, do not engage. Marith turned back to Lorith. Your impression of the human. Lorith shifted his weight. His bioluminescence flickered through a sequence Marith recognized as uncertainty. She was calm, too calm. I felt no fear spike, no elevated threat response, just a steady burn I could not read. That is not calm, Marith said. That is suppression. Their war broke something in them. Perhaps, Lorith said, or perhaps it forged something else. The Orvani made a sound of disgust, a low hiss from deep in her throat. You waste time analyzing a broken species while the Riven tighten their grip. The humans are irrelevant. They have nothing to offer but scars. Marith did not answer. She walked to the edge of the crystal floor and studied the psionic memory patterns rippling along the walls. Ship traffic, trade agreements. The faint, static-laced presence of the human freighter docked in the lower bay. It pulsed with a strange signature, something organic but not alive, like a wound kept closing. A subharmonic alert vibrated through the floor. Marith felt it before she heard it. A low thrum climbed from her feet through her spine and settled behind her eyes. She pressed her hand against the crystal wall. The memory patterns shifted, reforming into a tactical overlay. A boarding pod, small, fast, launched from the edge of the system. Its trajectory already burned into the station's defense network. It was not heading for the main docking bay or the armory or the consulate chambers. It was heading for the habitation sector, the sector where the human quarters were located. The Orvani saw it too. She stopped tapping her claw and went very still. They are provoking you. Marith felt the crystal floor sing the pod's approach speed. 5 minutes, 4.5. The Riven had timed this carefully. They wanted a reaction. They wanted the humans to see violence before they had a chance to trust the Endari. She looked at the counselors. They pulsed a steady green now. Protocol, follow the rules, do not escalate. Protocol said she should wait. Protocol said she should observe, record, present evidence to the Federation Council. Protocol said the Endari did not take sides. Mara thought of the human's heartbeat, steady and measured. She thought of Lorith's description of the woman's eyes, too calm, a burn he could not read. She made her decision. Marith closed her eyes. She reached out with her psionic voice, pushed through the crystal, through the station's walls, through layers of plasteel and living membrane separating her from the habitation sector. She had never touched a human mind before. She did not know what to expect. She found a wall. Not a barrier, not a shield, just a wall of static and pain. Old wounds layered so deep they had become architecture. The human had lived inside that wall for years, maybe decades. The pain was not fresh. It was settled. It was part of the foundation. And behind the wall a voice, clear, measured, unafraid. I know we are already moving. The connection broke. Marith opened her eyes. She exhaled a breath she had not realized she was holding. Lorith was staring at her. What did you do? I warned her. The Orvani laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You warned a human with psionics. What did she say? Marith looked at the tactical overlay. The boarding pod was still 4 minutes out. The crystal floor hummed its approach, a steady pulse like a second heartbeat. She said they are already moving. The Orvani's laugh died. Her clawed hand went still. Lorith's fingers traced a shape in the air, a question he did not voice aloud. The counselors pulsed a slow white, curiosity. Marith walked to the center of the chamber. She pressed both hands against the crystal floor. She could feel the station's nervous system, the flow of air through its vents, the rhythm of its biological pumps, and she could feel something else, a vibration coming from the lower bay, not the ship's engines, something smaller, something moving. The humans were doing something. She did not know what. She waited. The pod was 3 minutes out, 2.5. The crystal floor shuddered. The wall behind her flared with psionic light. The memory patterns twisted into a new image. The human freighter's cargo hatch had opened. Something had emerged from inside. A cloud. A silver cloud spread across the station's exterior hull like a living oil slick. Marith watched it crawl over the metal, sealing seams, reinforcing weak points. The human ship was not running, it was not hiding. It was repairing the station. The crystal floor hummed a question she could not answer. 2 minutes. The silver cloud was still moving. Marith could hear it now. A faint hiss through the walls like rain on a hot surface. The humans were not running to shelter. They were crawling outside the station, working on the hull exposed to vacuum. The Orvani whispered something in her own language. It sounded like a prayer. 1 minute. Marith felt the boarding pod enter the station's outer envelope. She felt its magnetic clamps engage. She felt the breach. But the silver cloud was already there. It poured into the boarding pod's entry shaft, filling it, solidifying, turning the path into a wall of living metal. The pod's crew tried to cut through. The cloud regrew faster than their blades could move. Marith stood at the center of the chamber, her hands against the crystal floor. For the first time in her life, she did not know what to do. The humans had not asked for permission. They had not waited for protocol. They had simply moved. And the Riven boarding team was trapped inside a pod, rapidly becoming a coffin. The crystal floor pulsed a deep, urgent blue. The counselors were all standing now. Lorith's hands hung still at his sides. He was not tracing shapes anymore. He just stared at the wall, at the silver cloud moving with a purpose he could not categorize. Marith looked down at her own hands. They were trembling. She had touched a human mind and found a wall of pain. She had expected weakness, a species broken by war and ready to collapse. Instead, she had found something that did not stop, something that did not ask for help. Something looked at death and decided to repair the hull first. She lifted her head. She looked at the Orvani ambassador. The ambassador's claw was still. Her eyes were wide. Marith spoke into the silence. I think we made a mistake. The crystal floor hummed a confirmation she did not want to hear. Thalia pressed her thumb into her palm and counted the vibrations through the deck plates. 2 impacts so far, both forward, both structural. She turned to the crew behind her. Barricade the junction, stack everything not bolted down. The 2 crew moved without answering. One dragged a cargo crate across the corridor. The other unlatched the medical kit, set it at Thalia's feet, and pulled out the signal ghost. The gray composite case hummed as it powered on. Jasper Vane stepped past her. He planted himself at the forward choke point. His mechanical arm whined as he cycled the joints. He spat the dried root from his mouth, then drew a kinetic pistol with his flesh hand. "You should be behind me," he said. "I should be doing my job," Thalia replied. She checked her own pistol, fully charged. She checked her jacket, too thin for combat, but it would buy her a fraction of a second against a plasma burn. A fraction was enough. The wall buckled. Not the door, not the hatch, the wall itself. The bioluminescent panels split along a vertical seam. The organic plating peeled outward like a wound opening. 3 Riven soldiers stepped through the gap. Their segmented exoskeletons clicked with each movement. Energy lances crackled in their grip, casting blue-white light across the corridor. The lead Riven raised its weapon. Thalia did not retreat. She stepped forward instead, raised her pistol, fired. The kinetic round struck the first Riven in the chest plate. A solid hit, but the armor held. The soldier staggered, recovered, and leveled its lance. The lance discharged. The bolt caught Thalia in the left shoulder. The heat burned through her jacket in less than a second. It burned through skin and muscle beneath. The smell of burnt fabric and cauterized flesh filled the corridor. She did not scream. Her pistol did not waver. She fired twice, then 3 times. The third round punched through the neck joint of the Riven's armor. Blue fluid sprayed across the panels. The soldier dropped, its lance clattering on the deck. Jasper moved before the body hit the ground. He met the second Riven head-on. The soldier thrust its lance forward. Jasper caught it with his mechanical arm. The weapon shattered against the reinforced metal. Sparks showered his shoulder. He grabbed the Riven by the throat, lifted it off the ground, and slammed it into the wall. The impact cracked the plating. The soldier went limp. He dropped the body and turned. The third Riven was already charging. Thalia met it in the center of the corridor. The lance caught her across the ribs, sliced through the jacket, and drew a line of fire along her side. She did not stop. She did not even slow. Her free hand came up with a combat blade. She drove it into the joint beneath the Riven's helmet. The blade sank deep. The soldier made a wet, grinding noise and toppled. Blue blood pooled on the deck. It sizzled where it touched the bioluminescent panels, eating through the organic surface. The corridor went silent. Thalia leaned against the wall. Her breathing was deep, deliberate, controlled. Blood soaked her side and dripped from her shoulder. She pressed her hand against the rib wound and held it there. Jasper's mechanical arm ground as he flexed his fingers. Metal scraped against metal. He looked at the bodies, then at Thalia. He said nothing. He did not need to. Footsteps approached from the far end. Marith rounded the corner with Lorith behind her. The Endari diplomat stopped at the edge of the blood pool. Her translucent skin pulsed once, twice. A rapid cascade of bioluminescence Lorith's hand signals could not keep up with. She saw the wound on Thalia's shoulder. The skin still smoking, the edges blackened and raw. She saw the wound on Thalia's side. Blood ran freely down her hip and dripped onto the deck. Thalia was still standing. Thalia was still breathing. Thalia was still talking. She spoke to her crew in low, even tones. "Status on the signal, Ghost." "Spooling up," one answered. 2 minutes to full projection." "Good, Jasper, check the breach. I want to know how many are in that section." "On it." Jasper moved to the broken wall and peered into the darkness beyond. His mechanical arm clicked as he adjusted the grip on his pistol. Marith took a step forward. Her hand reached out, instinctive, intended to help, to offer support, to do something. Thalia waved her off without looking. She pushed herself away from the wall and walked to the breach. Her boots smeared blue blood across the deck. She stopped beside Jasper and looked into the darkness. The corridor beyond was empty, but not silent. Something moved in the deep, something heavy. She turned back to Marith. "Is that all of them?" The words were flat, calm, as if she had asked about the weather, about docking schedules, about anything other than the 3 bodies cooling on the deck and the blood still running from her side. Marith could not answer. She had read Lorith's memory of Thalia in the bay. A calm woman, a controlled woman, a survivor learning to hide her wounds. But this was not hiding. This was standing in full view of the damage and continuing anyway. The Endari body shut down at this level of injury. Shock took hold. The nervous system withdrew. Consciousness faded. It was not cowardice. It was physiology. The body's way of protecting itself from trauma it could not process. Thalia Dorn had taken 2 direct hits from a Riven energy lance. Her flesh was still burning. Her blood pooled on the deck, and she stood at a breached wall, reloading her pistol, discussing strategy with her captain. Marith's understanding cracked. She had thought of humans as wounded animals, broken survivors, a species crawling from near extinction with nothing left but scars. She had pitied them. She had feared them. She had never understood them. They were not broken. They were built for this. The war should have destroyed them. Instead, it did something else. It burned away everything that could not endure. What remained was something the galaxy had no name for. Lorith touched her arm. His fingers traced a quick pattern against her skin. A question, "Are you all right?" She did not answer. Thalia looked back over her shoulder. The wound on her ribs had soaked through her jacket now. Blood ran in a steady line down to her hand. She did not seem to notice. "There will be more," she said, "but we are not done yet." She turned back to the darkness in the breached wall, and she waited for them to come. The medical alcove smelled of antiseptic cream and something metallic beneath it. Blood. Marith realized it was human blood. It had a sharper tang than Endari ichor, more mineral than organic. She stood in the doorway and watched the crew member work. The human medic was young, barely past adolescence by the look of her face. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she cleaned the burn on Thalia Dorn's shoulder. 3rd degree. Marith had seen enough injuries in her consular work to recognize the depth of tissue damage. The skin was gone in a patch the size of a palm. Muscle tissue glistened wetly beneath. Thalia did not flinch. She sat on the edge of the cot with her back straight and her eyes fixed on the wall opposite. Her hands rested on her knees. Steady hands, still hands, but her knuckles were white. The medic applied a cooling gel. Thalia's breath caught, just once, just a fraction of a second, then her breathing smoothed again. Marith stepped forward. "You should take a pain suppressant." Thalia turned her head. Her eyes were dark and calm. "Pain is a signal. If I numb it, I lose data." "Data," Marith repeated the word as if tasting it. "You call tissue necrosis data. I call it information." Thalia gestured with her good hand toward the wound. "This burn tells me exactly how deep the plasma bolt penetrated. It tells me the angle of impact and the distance of the shooter. It tells me whether my combat reflexes are degrading." Marith felt her psionic sense reach out without conscious permission. She brushed against Thalia's mind and recoiled. The nerve endings were raw. The chemical cascade of adrenaline still flooded her bloodstream. But beneath it all was a center of stillness Marith could not name. A calm place where Thalia waited, not numbed, not detached, present and observant. It was alien. Marith withdrew her psionic touch. "Your war, the one 50 years ago." Thalia nodded. "The scorch, we call it that." "Tell me." The medic paused her work. Jasper shifted his weight near the door, his mechanical arm clicking as he adjusted his stance. Lorith hovered at Marith's shoulder, his bioluminescence pale and flickering. Thalia looked down at her hands. "We had an industrial accident, a chain reaction in a fusion facility. It spread across 3 continents before anyone contained it." Marith knew the public records. Every species in the Endari Federation had studied the human near-extinction event. The scorch killed 80% of the human population in the first 6 months. The remaining 20% faced radiation sickness, crop failure, ecosystem collapse, and a slow slide toward the end of their species. "They should have died." 40 million survivors, Thalia said, spread across a planet that could no longer support life. No infrastructure, no supply chains, no medical system. She paused. "We rebuilt by learning to endure." Marith's bioluminescence pulsed a dark shade of confusion. In Endari culture, pain was a warning system. Suffering was a sign of failure. The body signaled distress and the conscious mind responded by seeking safety, by stopping the source of harm. To ignore pain was to ignore the body's wisdom. To push through suffering was to reject the most basic survival instinct. To use it as a tool was incomprehensible. "You rebuilt," Marith said slowly, "by refusing to stop." "We rebuilt by refusing to quit." Thalia's voice was flat, no pride in it, no triumph, just fact. "There is a difference." Lorith's voice cut through the quiet, high and strained. "Are you even afraid of dying?" Marith turned to look at him. His tracing fingers had stopped midair. His face was pale, his bioluminescence barely visible. Thalia held his gaze. A long silence stretched between them. "Yes," she said, "but I have work to do first." Lorith made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. He pressed his hand to his mouth and stepped back toward the door. Marith felt something shift in her own emotional core. She had come here expecting to find savagery. A species ignoring pain was a species that could not be reasoned with. A species that did not stop when injured was a species that would tear itself apart and take others with it. But she did not find that. She touched Thalia's mind again, deeper this time. She did not ask permission, she needed to understand. The memory rose like heat from stone. Evacuation ships burning in orbit. The sky streaked with fire. A woman on a crowded transport, her face streaked with ash, holding a child who could not stop coughing. The child's eyes were red-rimmed and terrified. The woman's voice was steady. She told the child a simple story about a boat and a storm and the people who refused to sink. The transport landed in a radiation zone. The woman walked through the ash with the child on her hip. She walked for 3 days. Her skin blistered. Her lungs burned. She walked until the child could walk beside her, and then she walked farther. She did not stop. Mareth pulled back. Her hands were shaking. She looked at Thalia and saw the woman from the memory. The same dark eyes, the same steady voice. The child had survived. The woman had not. "Well," Jasper's voice broke the quiet, "I am going to check the outer corridor." He pushed off the wall and walked past Mareth without looking at her. His mechanical arm left a faint scorch mark on the doorframe where he gripped it. The medic finished bandaging Thalia's shoulder and stepped back. "You need rest." "I need a status report," Thalia replied. The medic looked at Mareth. Her eyes were young, but her face was old. "She will not listen to me. Maybe she will listen to you." Mareth did not know what to say. She had no words for what she had just witnessed. Thalia stood up. The movement was slow and careful. She tested her range of motion and her jaw tightened. Then she looked at Mareth. "I understand your confusion," she said. "We look like a wounded animal to your people. A creature should be limping toward extinction, but we are not wounded." She paused. "We are adapted." The station's emergency sirens cut through the quiet. A high, keening wail vibrated in the walls and the floor and the bone behind Mareth's ear. The lights shifted to a pulsing red. Loreth grabbed the doorframe, and his bioluminescence flared bright with fear. A voice came over the station's internal comm, measured, controlled. An Endari traffic controller reading from a prepared announcement. Unauthorized vessel detected at system edge. Warship signature identified as Riven Collective Battle Cruiser Class. All non-combatants proceed to designated shelters. Mareth looked at Thalia. Thalia's face was unchanged. No fear, no surprise, just the same calm center waiting and observing. "The attack was a probe," Mareth said. "They were testing your defenses." Thalia nodded. "Now they are coming in force." She reached for a datapad on the cot. Her fingers moved across the screen. The signal ghost, its activation stud glowed amber. "How long until they are in weapons range?" Mareth pulled up the station's tactical display in her mind. The numbers scrolled behind her eyes. 12 minutes at current acceleration. Thalia smiled. It was not a warm smile. Plenty of time. The command deck of the Perseverance smelled of recycled air and machine oil. 3 monitors flickered with tactical data. Each one showed the same grim projection. The Riven cruiser was 3 hours out. The station had no weapons. Evacuation was impossible. Thalia Dorn stood at the navigation console. Her burned shoulder wore a field dressing already starting to seep through. She pressed her thumb against her palm and stared at the gray composite case on the deck between her feet. The signal ghost, a briefcase full of lies. Jasper Vane sat at the helm. His mechanical arm rested on the control stick. He chewed his dried root slowly, eyes fixed on the main display. "You activate that thing, we become the anchor point. If they scan close, they will see through it. The ship will be the prime target." "I know," Thalia said. She knelt and pressed the single activation stud. The case hummed. The console vibrated as the power drain hit the overloaded generators. The smell of hot electronics rose from the vents. The main display shifted. A false sensor signature bloomed on the tactical grid. 10 human warships emerging from FTL formation. The illusion held. From a distance, it looked like a fleet. Thalia straightened and turned to Jasper. "Order the crew to the escape pods." Jasper looked at her. For a moment, he did not move. Then he keyed the shipwide comm and gave the order. His voice was flat and calm. The 2 engineers on the command deck left without a word. The hatch hissed shut behind them. The command deck fell silent. Just the hum of the ghost and the click of Jasper's root as he shifted it to the other side of his mouth. "You should go too," Thalia said. Jasper shook his head. "Someone has to fly the ship." I can fly it. You are the diplomat, I am the guard. She opened her mouth to argue. The console pinged. The Riven cruiser had slowed. They were buying the bluff. But the tactical display updated again. A single blip detached from the cruiser. A reconnaissance drone. It would reach visual range in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, then the illusion would collapse. Jasper saw it too. He leaned forward, studying the trajectory. I can fly the ship into its path, buy you time to dismantle the ghost and fade. Thalia stepped toward him. No, I am not losing anyone else. Jasper looked up. His eyes were tired. They had been tired for 50 years. I have been dead since the evacuation, he said. Let me finish something. The words hit her like a plasma bolt. She remembered the evacuation, the ships burning, the faces she left behind. Jasper had been there. He pulled survivors into the last shuttle until his arm was crushed. He never talked about it. I am not giving you an order, Thalia said. I am asking you to stay alive. He smiled, a thin smile cracked at the edges. You ask too much. His mechanical arm squealed as he forced the control stick. The Perseverance lurched. Thalia stumbled. The emergency hatch slid open behind her. Get in the pod, Jasper said. Jasper, get in the pod. He stood, his legs were unsteady, but his eyes were clear. He walked to her and put his human hand on her good shoulder. The pressure was gentle. You still have work to do, Thalia. The treaty is not signed. The Federation has not accepted us. You are the one to finish that. And you. He looked past her at the main display where the Riven drone was closing. I get to make sure you get there. He pushed her. It was not a shove. It was a release. He let go of her shoulder and stepped back. Thalia stood in the open hatchway. The escape pod was small and dark. It smelled of cold metal and vacuum sealant. She looked at Jasper. His face was at peace, a man finding his end. She did not say goodbye. She could not. She turned and stepped into the pod. The hatch closed. The seals engaged. The pod's internal display showed the Perseverance pulling away, its engines flaring bright. The nanoswarm crawled across the hull, a silver skin trying to contain the stress of acceleration. The pod launched. Thalia watched through the small viewport as the Perseverance grew smaller. Jasper's voice came over the comm. The channel was distorted, crackling with static. Tell them we do not stop. The line went dead. The Riven drone adjusted course. It had seen the Perseverance moving toward it. The cruiser began to power weapons. Thalia pressed her palm against the viewport. The ship accelerated. The hull glowed orange, then white. The nanoswarm could not keep up. Cracks formed across the silver skin. The Perseverance held its course. The drone opened fire. The shot hit the forward section. The hull buckled. The nanoswarm tried to seal the breach, but the damage was too fast, too hot. The ship began to list. But it kept moving. Thalia watched until the glare became too bright to look at. She closed her eyes. She heard the hum of the pod's engines and the hiss of its recyclers. She heard nothing from Jasper. The Riven cruiser fired again. The Perseverance broke apart. Pieces tumbled into the void, trailing atmosphere and fire. The drone stopped. It had what it needed. The cruiser began to turn. Thalia opened her eyes. The pod's display showed the Endari station growing larger. She was safe. She was alive. She had work to do. She pressed her thumb against her palm. The treaty was not signed. The Federation had not accepted them. Jasper had given her the time. She would not waste it. The pod drifted toward the station, silent and alone. Behind it, the wreckage of the Perseverance spun slowly in the dark, a monument to a man who had already been dead and found something worth finishing. The observation deck went dark for a single heartbeat. Then the Perseverance hit the drone. The collision was silent through the crystal dome. A white bloom erupted where the freighter met the reconnaissance craft. Debris scattered in all directions. The Perseverance did not slow. It kept going. Hull twisted and burning, a fist driven forward by momentum Jasper built across 2,000 kilometers. Marith pressed her palm flat against the crystal. The cold bit through her skin, grounding her in a way her psionics could not. Lorith stood beside her, both hands pressed to the glass. His bioluminescence flickered erratic patterns of distress. He said nothing. His breath fogged the surface in quick, shallow bursts. The Riven cruiser opened fire. Energy lances stabbed across the gap between warship and dying freighter. 3 hits in rapid succession. The Perseverance's hull peeled open along a seam from bow to midsection. Atmosphere vented in a frozen plume. But the nanoswarm was still working. Mareth saw it through the ship's distant sensors. A silver film crawling across the breach. Sealing, reinforcing, buying seconds that should not exist. The freighter was dead. Everyone on the observation deck knew it. But the nanites did not stop. The Perseverance reached the cruiser's forward array. Impact. The flash through the dome was blinding. Mareth shielded her eyes with one forearm. The psionic reflex sent a pulse of static through the room, making Loreth flinch. When she lowered her arm, the Riven cruiser was listing. Its shields collapsed in a ripple of dying light. One engine nacelle trailed atmosphere in a bright stream of venting gas. The ship could not pursue. It could barely hold position. A moment of absolute stillness. The debris of the Perseverance tumbled through the void. Pieces spun, catching starlight as they drifted apart. Then the broadcast came through. The station's speakers carried Vornak's voice. Flat, controlled. The segmented plates of his exoskeleton clicked as he spoke. The audio picked up every rasp of chitin on chitin. You fight like things with nothing left to lose. That is not a fight we want. A pause, the channel remained open. It carried the sound of a riven bridge. Clicks, low hissing, the hum of damaged systems. We withdraw. The transmission cut. Loreth's hands slid down the glass. He turned to Mareth. His eyes were wide. His bioluminescence pulsed a slow, almost submissive blue. They are leaving. Mareth did not answer. She watched the debris cloud. The pieces of the Perseverance still separated. A constellation of metal and wiring and the remnants of a ship patched together and held together by a man who refused to let go. A void opened in her chest. It was not a psionic sensation. It was deeper, something her species had no name for, a cold absence where understanding should have been. She had watched a being choose death with the same certainty another being might choose to breathe. And she did not know what to do with that. The escape pod docked 12 minutes later. Mareth reached the bay as the hatch cycled open. Loreth followed a step behind, his fingers tracing nervous patterns in the air. The station's bioluminescent panels dimmed as the pod's systems powered down. The space cast in a soft amber glow. Thalia Dorn stepped out. Her shoulder was bandaged, the white wrap stained through with red at the edges. Her face was hollow, eyes fixed on a point not existing in this room. She walked past Mareth without speaking, her boots scraped on the deck, heavy, slow, each step a separate decision. The medic from earlier appeared at the doorway, a scanner in one hand. Thalia stopped in front of her, still not looking at anyone. I need to see the council, Thalia said. Her voice was flat, no strain in it, no grief, just a fact stated into the air. You need to rest, the medic said. I need to see the council. The medic looked at Mareth. Mareth gave a small nod, barely perceptible. The medic stepped aside. Thalia walked through the doorway and disappeared into the corridor beyond. Loreth stared after her. His hands had stopped moving. They hung at his sides, fingers slightly curled. He seemed to have forgotten what to do with them. He turned to Mareth. Did he mean to do that? Mareth looked at the glass of the observation deck. She could still see the debris through it, rotating slowly against the stars. A piece of hull plating caught the light and glinted once before spinning into shadow. Yes, she said. He meant every second of it. The words sat in the air between them. Loreth's bioluminescence pulsed a color Mareth had never seen him use before, a deep violet, the color of something being learned. Mareth walked to the glass and placed her hand on it again. The cold was still there. The void in her chest was still there, but something else grew beneath it. Something felt like the beginning of an answer. The station's communication system chimed. A single tone, clear and insistent. Mareth turned. Loreth was already reading the message on his wrist interface. His eyes scanned the text. It is from the Council, he said. They want to negotiate a formal treaty with humanity. He looked up. They want Thalia to lead it. Mareth crossed the deck and entered the corridor. She found Thalia standing in front of a wall display, reading the same message from a different terminal. Her bandaged shoulder was stained a deeper red now, but she made no move to adjust it. We need to make this count, Thalia said. She did not look away from the display. Her voice carried no triumph, no relief, just a quiet and absolute certainty. Mareth stood beside her. She did not speak. She simply waited. She was beginning to understand that waiting was what humans did when they were not finished yet. And Thalia Dorn was far from finished. The crystal floor glowed warm gold beneath Thalia's boots. different from the cold gray it held when she first walked this chamber, different from the blue pulse of emergency lighting during the attack. The Endari had transformed their hall for ceremony, and the change felt deliberate, intentional. Marith stood at the dais with her hands clasped before her. Her bioluminescence moved slow and steady, a rhythm of peace rather than alert. Lorith stood behind her, his fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. For once he was not asking questions, he was smiling. Representatives from 3 species lined the chamber. The Orvani ambassador sat rigid, his scaled hide catching the golden light. The Fataris delegate hung suspended in a levitation field, a sphere of shifting color pulsing amber in slow rotation. A single veil-shard observer pressed against the far wall, its crystalline form absorbing and refracting the room's glow into tiny rainbows. Thalia walked forward alone. Her formal diplomatic coat covered the bandaged shoulder. The fabric was clean, pressed, unmarked. She had worn it for ceremonies before, funerals mostly, victory parades feeling hollow, but this one was different. This one was forward. She reached the central crystal table and stopped. The table was smooth, warm to the touch, alive with the same bioluminescent threads running through every surface of the temple. Thalia placed her hand flat on it, palm down, fingers spread, a gesture of trust she had rehearsed in her quarters the night before. Marith inclined her head, her voice carried through the chamber, clear and deliberate. The terms of the accord are as follows. She recited them from memory. Open trade routes between the Endari Federation and the Human Diplomatic Corps, exchange of medical knowledge on a reciprocal basis. A permanent human embassy on the temple station, staffed by no more than 20 personnel. Joint research into post-trauma physiology. Cultural exchange programs. Each term landed like a stone in still water. Thalia watched the Orvani ambassador's face. He had not moved since she entered. His scales had tightened across his throat, a sign of tension she had learned to read over the past 3 days. She had seen the same posture in diplomats about to object. He stood. "I must speak." Marith's bioluminescence flickered once. The Orvani delegation may address the chamber. The ambassador stepped forward. His voice was sharp, clipped, carrying the weight of old resentment. "This species has been in contact with the Federation for less than a standard cycle. Their history is violence. Their recovery is incomplete. Their ships are armed. We are being asked to grant them full embassy status without observation period, without probationary terms, without safeguards." He turned to face the other delegates. "The Riven attacked this station because of human presence. What happens when the next attack comes? What happens when their conflicts follow them into our space?" The chamber fell silent. Thalia did not argue. She reached up with her free hand and slowly rolled back her sleeve. The fabric pulled away from her forearm, revealing the network of scars the plasma burn had left behind. White and silver lines, raised tissue, the map of a fire she had walked through. She held her arm out, palm open. "We do not hurt others because we are callous." Her voice was flat, quiet it carried. "We hurt others because we learn to hurt ourselves first. That changes when we have something better to protect." She let the words settle, let them breathe. The Orvani ambassador stared at her scars, his throat scales relaxed by a fraction. Marith stepped forward. She raised her hand. A pulse of psionic energy spread through the chamber, gentle as a wave on a shallow shore. She was translating, not the words, the feeling behind them, the sincerity beneath the flat surface. The Orvani ambassador's eyes widened. He looked at Thalia as if seeing her for the first time. Marith lowered her hand. "The chamber will now vote." The Fataris delegate pulsed green, acceptance. The veil-shard observer shifted its crystalline body, sending a cascade of light across the walls. A gesture of silent approval. The Orvani ambassador stood frozen for a long moment. Then he sat down. He did not vote. He abstained. Marith turned to Thalia. "The accord passes." The crystal floor brightened. The bioluminescent threads along the walls pulsed a warm gold matching the ceremony lights. Lorith let out a breath he had been holding and pressed his palms together in a gesture of relief. Thalia stood still. She did not smile. She did not cry. She simply exhaled. Marith stepped down from the dais and extended her hand. Human skin against translucent Endari flesh. Thalia's grip was firm, measured. Marith felt the pulse beneath the skin, steady, unhurried, a heart learning to keep beating through worse things than this ceremony. Marith closed her eyes. She sent a single pulse through their contact, pure, Unfiltered gratitude. Thalia did not flinch. She accepted it. The chamber began to empty. The Fataris delegate drifted toward the exit, its color shifting to a calm blue. The Veilshard observer dissolved into the wall, its essence absorbed back into the station's crystal structure. The Orvani ambassador left without speaking, but his posture had changed. Less rigid, more uncertain. Thalia pulled her sleeve back down. She adjusted her coat. She turned toward the door. Ambassador Dorn. Marith's voice stopped her. Thalia turned back. Yes. Marith took a step closer. Her bioluminescence flickered, uncertain for the first time. Will you tell me about the war, not the data, the feeling? Thalia's face cracked. Just a fraction, just for a moment. The mask slipped, and beneath it was something raw and tired and still bleeding. Maybe someday. Her voice was barely a whisper. Not today. She walked away. Her boots echoed against the golden floor. The sound faded as she reached the corridor, and the door closed behind her with a soft hiss. Marith stood alone in the chamber. She looked at the crystal table where Thalia had placed her hand. The warmth of the touch still lingered in the surface. She pressed her own palm against it, feeling the residual heat. Lorith stepped up beside her. His voice was soft. She will tell you eventually. Marith did not answer. She kept her hand on the table, feeling the pulse of the station around her, the life of the temple, the steady hum of a place that had chosen connection over isolation. The accord was signed, but something else had begun, something without a name yet. Marith closed her eyes and let herself feel it. The void Jasper's sacrifice left behind was still there. It was smaller now, filled in part by the memory of Thalia's steady pulse. The bridge was built, but she finally understood the Orvani's fear. Humans brought their conflicts with them because they never stopped fighting, not against others, against entropy itself, against the quiet end. Marith had seen it in Thalia's eyes in Jasper's final act. It was the terrifying, brilliant truth of their species. They were most dangerous and most necessary when they were not finished.